2016 BlizzCon round of 8. Elazer back then with a couple of swarm hosts on King Sejong Station. That is pretty much all I remember. So that was a big series, and I think ever since that moment, I mean, these two having such a special date on such a big stage, this has also been a pretty storied matchup. I'm excited for it. I know that this man is excited for it, and I know a lot of the German Protoss fans out there have been eagerly waiting to see Mr. Mauer in action here in the TeamLiquid StarLeague number 9. Top right side, representing Berlin International Gaming. It's showtime.
And looking to flip the script in this rivalry in the purple from TeamLiquid. I guess he's got maybe hometown advantage here. He's going to try. It is Elazer. And you know, Roddy, not only have they played a lot, they played each other at TSL 8, lower bracket. ShoWTimE booted Elazer out of TSL. ShoWTimE booted Elazer out of TSL. And this was a TSL that Elazer was looking very good. So we also got that there. Elazer doesn't want to get at least this is the upper bracket, but we got some tournament history here too.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, you already said it. The last 5 in a row went in favor of ShoWTimE, and at that point, it starts nagging you a little bit as a player. You know, like some players will say they don't necessarily always keep track of these things, but there is a 0 chance in hell that Elazer is not aware of the fact that ShoWTimE has been able to get the best of him the last few times they played, and especially knocking him out of a big EPT tournament last weekend over in Krefeld, Germany. That kind of stuff, it starts getting to you. So I'm sure that Elazer has done whatever he could to get ready. He is, of course, very good friends with the likes of Lambo and Raynor. And maybe those bright Zerg minds came together and trying to figure out what is the best way to dismantle Mr. Mauer.
And not only is it 5 series in a row, it's Elazer's taken 2 maps over the course of those 5 series. So it's not feeling great. But before then, Elazer had a run, and it seems like Zergs are starting to get a bit better understanding about how to deal with this modern Protoss style, where you get that 345 Evo chamber, you get a really quick +1, try to ambush the stalkers on the map, you go a very link heavy style, all these different things. And in response, we've actually started to see Protoss players pay a lot more Charge Lot Archon, which at the start of the new meta was actually the revelation was you don't build Charge Lots because Banelings are too good. So it's really interesting to see that back and forth now as people start to figure out how Protoss or Ground Toss is more viable. But point being, as Zergs have started to figure out how to play ZVP in the new meta a little bit more, I mean, that's only got to benefit Elazer.
Yep. And don't forget that Elazer is never afraid to switch it up. I always think back of like one thing that Elazer said about Nidus in ZVT, where people ask him about Nidus networks, and he's like, man, if Nidus was good, I would Nidus every single Terran out there. It's just not good, okay? Stop talking to me about Nidus and Terrans. But we also saw when he went up against Reynor's Protoss at Home Story Cup, and Reynor's Protoss is really good in macro games, that Elazer is still willing to throw in a couple of all-ins in there, and if he feels that a certain build has a weakness, he is absolutely going to exploit that weakness of that build. So we'll see. The Stalker is on the wrong side, and I actually think it's going to take a little while before... Nope, it gets another shot off. I thought it might have to do the ring around the rosy, go back, and then it will get one more shot off. But nice for ShoWTimE to take care of that immediately. And ShoWTimE will just go up to 3 bases at 3 minutes and 50 seconds without really too much info, right? Sure, there was a probe on the other side of the map that did see Elazer go up to 3 bases. But at this point, ShoWTimE has no idea if Elazer made a bunch of links or not.
It looks like he's gonna go on the right side of that coin toss. He guessed heads and it came up heads. No Lingers on the map right now as Oracle's onto the other side, but behind this one, a couple additional gateway. It's just 48. It's not too bad. Oracles are gonna dive in. Queen's in good position though. Do we have a spore? Not yet. This is a problem. Zergs have started to try to be greedy by really avoiding spore play and say, it's gonna be fine with Queens. But ShoWTimE, he finds the opening. 5 drones go down and really not a lot of damage on this Oracle to start.
I love the call there by ShoWTimE to still go for it, because the Queens, I'm with you, they were in a good spot, but in a weird way, Elazer was almost bluffing a bit, where he puts the Queen so far forward that he's like, hey, I would really not go in there, and then ShoWTimE is like, well, let's see if that is the case or not, and he kind of just flies past them, eats a couple of shots, but then suddenly it opens up the entire middle line, because there is no Spore Crawler there, Oracles are in no danger. This is just a absolutely flying start for ShoWTimE. 7 drones, both oracles still pretty healthy, to be honest. We're not even looking at like 1 HP oracles, right? Yeah, they took a bit of damage, but that for 7 drones, you're going to be more than happy with that if you're ShoWTimE. Elazer is not going to be happy. The follow-up is interesting, right? Because it's resonating glaive at depth, and that is obviously not something that Elazer at this point is aware of at all.
One oracle into glaive adepts is something that is understandable. That is something that stats started doing and other people started doing, but double oracle into glaive is new. It's not something that I think I've seen is 12 adepts on the other side of the map. Now, you don't have a robo with this build. Reinforcements are not nearly as accessible. So what ShoWTimE has on the other side of the map is effectively what he's gonna get. But because this happened so late, because this was double oracle, there's no Roach Warren on the way, or even done. Baneliness not yet done here, so the Adept's trying to get on top of the Queens, but good transfuses for now. Adept looking to shade on forward, but for the moment, Elazer is actually handling this very well indeed. But now into the main base, where all the Lings already are. But Roddy, I don't know that there are enough Lings just yet.
There are not enough Lings yet, but the attack count at least is dwindling. But we still don't have a Spore Crawler here, and that means that the Oracle can show up as well. Activate Pulse. Imagine if the Oracle would have been there a bit sooner, by the way. Then Elazer would have taken an absolutely disastrous fight against all these adepts. Now it's painful, and he's not quite done yet. Loses a lot of mining time, loses 9 drones. This could have been a whole lot worse, but I still don't think Elazer is happy, man. This game is just a bit too sloppy overall. We are not even 7 minutes in, and already 16 workers have died. And it's not like ShoWTimE has been cutting ropes to make any of this happen. Nope. Mr. Mauer sitting at 65 workers very comfortably. Still has, well, 1 Oracle. He did manage to lose 1 currently somewhere. I kind of missed that one. But still has an Oracle out for a bit of map vision. He's going up to 4 bases. That Blink upgrade that we obviously talked about, and we almost seen every single high-level PvZ at the moment, is very close to finishing up. If you're Elazer, you're just not happy with this because you know it all could have been better. And so far, there hasn't really been one thing in this entire game that makes you go, woohoo, if you're Elazer, right? Like, what was a great moment for him? Maybe killing that 1 Oracle that I missed, but that's like the only real thing that he could celebrate.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the one thing that Elazer's got going for him, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but he does have a bunch of Hydras on the way. He has this army that technically does fight well against a bunch of Stalkers. Hydra Ling +1 on the way, but that +1 is very, very late. It's certainly not going to time out with what ShoWTimE has. I do want to point out, ShoWTimE, he did rebuild that second Oracle, and you like that a lot. Having 2-3 Oracles on the map really defends these Stalkers, and now ShoWTimE going for the laser supply blocked here. The Lings are going to get on top of things. Hydras as well. They do not have range just yet, so they're not really shooting over the force fields. That being said, 1 Oracle will go down. ShoWTimE setting up. This is a fantastic concave from Elazer, but ShoWTimE blinking backwards, doing what he can. The Hydras are starting to fall, and ShoWTimE, there are still plenty of Stalkers where that came from. The addition of the Queens of those transfuses looks like it might be enough, at least for the moment, to force ShoWTimE back.
I'm just going to clip the part where you said he's got Hydras in the way, and it's great, because I love it, mate. Like you and I. We think the same way. Lambo will never agree with us, but that's okay. Overall, it was a decent fight for Elazer, but it wasn't perfect. He needs a bit more. And actually, I think ShoWTimE is perhaps being a bit overly aggressive here because he's the one with the economic advantage. He really doesn't need to take any risk like stepping on creep. Now, as long as he's staying on the edge of creep, it's obviously perfectly fine. And as long as our micro is good, and so far the micro is good by Mr. Mauer. The Hydras are trying to make the difference. We have 14 of them on the way. Now, if all 14 Hydras would show up at the same time and Groot finally finishes up, then it becomes doable for Elazer. But if you make Hydras as a Zerg and you don't have a Lurker, then you don't have Hive, you need better fights, right? You need to be smashing these fights. And Elazer is not smashing anything. He's kind of like barely hanging in there. And that's just nowhere near good enough for these Hydras.
And now with the addition of these Zealots as well, with no Baneley's, Baneley Nest is done, but the Zealots, so they're going to be able to get right on top of these Hydras. That being said, there are a ton of Hydras here, Roddy, and they are starting to shred the Zealots, starting to shred the Stalkers just a little bit, but there's a second round of Charlotte there as, look at this, Elazer microing backwards behind the wall that are these Queens, but the wall only lasts so long against the force of the Mauer against the German wall. And Elazer, he's going to have to back up once again. ShoWTimE moving from strength to strength in this game. He's got his 5th base on the way. He's on 80 probes. One thing, though, he doesn't have +2. He's going +1 armor. And these Stalkers, they're not quite as strong as we would expect to see at this stage of the game.
And a lot of stalkers have obviously lost some of its real HP, which is not necessarily always a bad thing if you keep them alive. But I have the feeling that ShoWTimE is misreading this a little bit. Like, I don't know if he thinks that Elazer has dropped an infestation pit and is going up too high, but Elazer is pretty hard stuck, man, on a bad economy of Hydra Ling Bane, which means that we are gearing up for one big powerful wave of Zerg, and that's it. But meanwhile, ShoWTimE is playing this like Lurkers are out and Vipers are on the way. That is not quite the case. ShoWTimE should really slow down, and he is backing off right now. Elazer doesn't really have many ways to go, right? This is it. It's one big, good old wave of Hydra Ling Bane. And if I'm ShoWTimE, I'm just building cannons and batteries everywhere I can see. And I try to survive. And if I survive that one wave of Banelings, because these are the very first Banelings we see out on the map. And that's a funny thing, right? Because we saw the Banelings go down at minute 4 or 5. It's now an 11-minute game. And this is legitimately the first time we see Banelings. Yeah, Elazer is all in. It sounds silly when you're on 5 bases and we are 12 minutes into a game. But Elazer really is all in on the composition he currently has. And this composition is not good against static defenses off grid.
I mean, that being said, it's 14 Stalkers, it's 3 Archons. The army from ShoWTimE, yeah, it's got +1 armor. Yeah, there's a 5th base. Yeah, there's stack defense. But the army is not big, Roddy. If Elazer can find his way on the other side of the map, oh, good stay. Actually, that space trap kind of keeps the Banes alive. But if Elazer can find a position on that 5th base, if he can start to run through it, ShoWTimE's going to get there. He's going to get his Archon count up. But at the moment, if Elazer moved out right now, there is a world where he would be able to run through, just crush through, knock the 5th base down, maybe start to find some value on the 4th. But there we go. He's trying to find that position. Stasis trap's up, but not ready just yet. That is a massive stasis trap. It's a force field and a half. And now Elazer can't do anything. He cannot find the surface area. That stasis trap has killed Elazer's timing.
Yep, but maybe that does allow +2 melee to finish up. I think on one hand, Elazer would love to wait for that. On the other hand, he also knows that every second he waits, that tiny army of ShoWTimE that you mentioned a while ago will just get bigger and bigger. So here we go. It's Hydra Ling Bane one time and one time only. This is the all-deciding attack of this game. It's all right before +2 melee, and the supplies are already way too close for this ever to be a success. ShoWTimE will blink forward and win game 1 quite convincingly in the end. GG gets called. Elazer is gonna have to clean up the early game if he wants to defeat ShoWTimE today. You said it. He skipped the spore, and I felt he was kind of bluffing with the queens, where he moved them so far forward towards the edge of green, where he's like, "Don't you dare, oracles!" And a lot of pros players would see that, be like, "Okay, no, there's no opening here." But ShoWTimE is like, "Nah." Let's just see. And he flies past them, and suddenly oracles obviously move quicker than queens. Puts the oracles in a great spot, and you grab 7 workers immediately. And at that point, you're already loving life if you're ShoWTimE.
In fairness to Elazer, now the oracles, they got too much damage early. That is just you skip spores, you get a little too greedy. Good call there from ShoWTimE. But that follow-up of I'm going to go glaive adepts, 4-get glaives off of 2 oracles is just, it's not a thing. It worked out well, but it's not a build that exists in the current matchup. So I can respect Elazer for not getting a Roach Warren, for not really being prepped for anything like that, because that's just that was never going to be on his radar. And realistically, it's probably something that should only work really once. But now,
But we did have a Baneling Nest, and I actually do think that like Link Bane Queen is very good as well against adepts. But it's also important as a Zerg that you don't over defend, because yeah, it's a big investment by ShoWTimE. It's 12 adepts, it's resonating glaive, it matters, it needs to do something. But it also doesn't mean that as a Zerg you can sit there, it's like, okay, I've got 12 Banelings ready to receive this attack. Because if you do that, you've mined so much gas, you're spending all of your resources on just that defense. And meanwhile, ShoWTimE is just building up probe after probe on the other side of the map. And obviously, if ShoWTimE sees that you're ready with 12 Banelings, he's never going to shade in the first place. And then he's already dealt the damage that he was looking for. So I think Baneling Nest can be excellent. But Elazer was obviously trying to catch up in work account because he lost so many drones in the first place to the oracles that you're trying to skip a few corners. And it all started with him skipping the Spore Crawler corner. But yeah, that was game 1. It is what it is. In the end, we had a couple of great fights. But this man has once more, like so often in the recent history when these two duke it out with each other, taken the 1-0 lead. He is our German Protoss player representing Berlin International Gaming. It is ShoWTimE.
And in the upper right, in the purple, looking to get us to a game number 3 for Team Liquid, folks. Elazer. And Roddy, you talk about those Banes in game 1. The time when the Adepts moved in, the Baneling Nest was not quite done. It was finishing up. So I understand. I don't think there was a second round of Adepts really. So maybe to defend the natural, but I think the Baneling Nest was just slightly too slow there for Elazer to really use that for the defense.
Okay. I thought it was pretty much done. I think he could have morphed a couple of links, but maybe missaw it. I mean, in the end, I think Elazer got lucky that the Oracles didn't show up in the main base immediately. Because if that would have happened, then those links would have never gotten a remotely decent fight against all these Adepts. But it always starts with the first thing that is impactful in a game. And very often in this matchup, when it's Stargate against just macro, it's about the Oracles, right? How good is the Zerg defense? And losing 1 drone, 2 drone, it's almost inevitable. That will always happen, especially if the Protoss is willing to take some real damage on his Oracles. We looked at like 12 drones going down relatively early in the game. And against a player like ShoWTimE, that's just not good enough.
Yeah, now, one thing I'm going to be curious about is the pool finishes up. We've started to see Elazer get really greedy with his openings. He's skipping lings. We talked about the spores. And one way we've started to see Protoss players abuse that a little bit is they'll go the pylon block the third base position. Now, ShoWTimE did not probe scout, so that's not really going to be a thing. And it looks like Lazer's just going to get away with this. Yeah, 2 lings on the way, just a little bit of an anti-probe scout. He gets an early drone, and that may not seem like a lot, but in this game, when you're dealing with Oracle harass and just as crisp as the Protoss timings are, 1 drone will make at least a moderate difference in a Lazer's buildup.
Yeah. It's all the little things that do indeed make the difference in the end. I'm not surprised to see ShoWTimE going for a Stargate once more, not only because we know it's the standard and he's very fond of it, but especially in that first game when he knows that Elazer will know that he will most likely open up Stargate and he still can find that much success with the initial set of Oracles. Why would you change it, right? It's a matter of execution. And even if I think back of a couple of the online games that Elazer has played over the last few weeks against different Protoss players, it does seem that Elazer's defense against the Oracles is not as good as some of the other Zergs that are on similar level to him. So why would you switch it up if you ShoWTimE here? Could you go for Glaives immediately? Yes. Could you go for DTs? Of course, it's all fine. But why would you if it seems that Elazer is just not as good against the Oracles as most of the other Zergs are?
Yeah, it seems like Elazer is part of this cabal of foreign Zergs that really, we talk about skipping things, that really enjoy only getting 1 spore, or getting the skipping spores in multiple locations. Because he says, oh, yeah, if my queens are able to shadow box well enough, the Oracle doesn't dive in, and then I put myself in a massive lead. I didn't buy as much defense as I should have. But we saw last game, ShoWTimE, he capitalized on that one. A bunch of workers did go down. We're seeing Elazer do the same thing. No spores in the main base, 1 spore in the natural, which is actually a really weird spot to put the spore. Normally, if you're going to skip spores like this, you'd put them on the edge of where is accessible. So on the left side of the main base where Elazer is right now, on the right side of the third, putting it in the natural, Oracles are not really going to find their way in all that much. That is a secondary target. So Oracles now, I mean, we're going to see him go on the main base right now. There's no spore. How many queens are in the main, though? That's the real big question. And there are 3, so that's starting to be something. But hey, third base.
Yep, Queens moving away, but in the end they turn around at the absolutely perfect moment. I wonder if ShoWTimE will once more fire up Glaives, because we have a couple of links being annoying. Picking up a Stalker, picking up an Adept, that's actually quite nice. No matter what the follow-up is of ShoWTimE, he's always going to need one of those 2 units. So, decent little start, and now the Oracles are forced to turn around home. They have to activate Cold Beam on this side of the map. I mean, this is a night and day difference compared to Data C, right? 5 minutes in, 0 drones have gone down. Previous game, we were looking at 10 drones going down at this point. So if you're Elazer, you're obviously going to be quite happy with this. Don't get too carried away. Still pay attention, because Oracles still have plenty of energy. But so far, so good. This time around, the Oracles do get deflected. ShoWTimE is going to try his luck one more time, but extra queens have shown up. So it's 4 queens in the main. Do we have enough in the natural? We have a Spore Crawler that gets a couple of shots off. I mean, it's only 3 drones. So much better on the side of Elazer this time around.
Hey, Elazer's much happier, but I do appreciate that the build that Elazer went for last game is better against ShoWTimE's composition this game, or what ShoWTimE's going for this game, than it was last game. With the hydrogen going down, just skipping all the roaches. There's a roach war in here for Elazer. And in all honesty, roaches against all these Blink Stalkers is just not good. ShoWTimE, though, moving out on the map now before Blink is done, trying to put pressure on this fourth base. And all the Lings of Elazer, they're on the other side of the map looking for that run by. These Queens are in a little bit of trouble here, Roddy. It's getting a little weird.
Yep, we had a couple of links, and I actually think if the links would have gone on top of the battery immediately, then those two Stalkers that were trying to defend the third base of ShoWTimE, they would have been in trouble. Now, of course, the Oracles could have helped out in the end, but the Oracles kind of wanted to be with the Stalkers that were on the aggressive. So in the end, it's only a single Queen falling. One Overlord is misread. That's going to supply block Elazer, and that makes it a gnarly one immediately, right? Like 113 out of 112, only one Overlord close to finishing up, but we lose another one. You don't want to deal with this stuff when a bunch of Stalkers are right in your face.
You really don't. And we talk about anti-hero style play because that's what we see here. No robo, nothing like that. Just heavy +1 blink pressure. That's going to be nice around here, though. Lings, they're going to find this fourth base. There are not enough Stalkers here to defend. A couple more warp in, sure, but with no static defense, this army of ShoWTimE is going to have to go home. And this buys Elazer more time to get his Elazer Lords out, to get +1 there, secure that fourth base. But as we're talking about this, Roddy, he's got to find a way to take the fifth. There's not a lot of creep spread around that 12 o'clock position. He's going to try to get up there eventually, but knocking Elazer or forcing ShoWTimE back home is so massive here for Elazer to just start to stabilize. That initial pressure from the Protoss is often what defines how this game goes.
And we still have all these links chilling in the bottom side of the map, so they could potentially go for that base one more time. Now the Oracles are left behind, but Oracles can sometimes be a bit annoying to defend with because you have to activate and cancel and activate Pulse or Beam again. And ShoWTimE very casually grabs 2 Queens there. I think that's actually a bit sloppy on the side of Elazer. Queens are pricey. Losing a few links, not that big of a deal. Losing 2 Queens, that's going to start adding up. Especially because right now we only have 5 Queens. Like, that is a surprisingly low Queen count for an 8-minute game.
He was at 7, so in fairness, I guess the Queen count was less surprising before he lost them. But ShoWTimE rotating north side, and I mentioned the creep earlier. It's just not really there just yet, but the hatch is just about complete. So Elazer does have to try to defend this one. Good job with the Lings triggering that stasis. Oh, it's a bit of a surround there, a bit of a force field. Good job, Elazer. Will force ShoWTimE to blink back wholesale, and now creep is going to start to spread past that base. Queens are going to find their way down. Lings on the bottom side. Their +1 is done. Baneling speed is done. Elazer's going to have a little bit more strength in this run by, but there are plenty of Zealots to meet this one. And 5th base on the way for ShoWTimE at the same time. Gets a Ravager as well. That's just nice little trades here from the German Protoss.
Yep, and those Zealots have +1 too, right? And if both units have +1, it definitely favors the Zealots because they can 2-shot the Lings. Now, a couple of Zealots could have gone for a cancel on this hatchery in the bottom right side, but ShoWTimE is dropping a little bit, maybe paying slightly more attention to how he wants to micro his Stalkers. ShoWTimE needs to make sure that he doesn't overcommit. So far, he doesn't. Now we have a couple of Roaches showing up at the bottom right, and that should be more than enough to send these Zealots home packing. But I'm looking at the economies, I'm looking at where the game is going. You see no infestation pit, you don't see a hive on the way. Elazer needs to start getting big dubs right here, right now. This is where his army supply is big, ShoWTimE's army supply is small. ShoWTimE is even playing very adventurous with so many Zealots. Maybe getting a kill even on the hatchery in the bottom right side. They get a straight up kill, no cancel on that one. 300 minerals down the drain. ShoWTimE just warped in an uneven amount of High Templars. These are the things that really trigger me. Because now he warped in 9. Whoever warps in 9 High Templars?
No, Roddy, Trigger plays tomorrow. He's not playing today.
And I'm looking forward to it. Okay, great PvP against Nightmare. But yeah, now I feel like it's just going to get harder and harder. Because ShoWTimE went from 0 Archons to now 5 Archons. And with the layer attack composition that Elazer is working with, once more, it's a 10-minute game. The economies are big. You don't want to call every attack an all-in. But Elazer needs to find damage in the next minute, or this game will come to a very one-sided end. He knows that, so it's pedal to the metal. He's going to go for it in the top left side. People ShoWTimE is like, hey, what are you doing, mate? I thought I was going to go for it. And this might actually help Elazer, to be totally honest, man. Because now he doesn't have to fight near army and static defenses at the same time.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird base trade, and base trading Protoss always feels interesting on these compositions because as long as ShoWTimE can keep one base alive, he will of course have the ability to recall, and bottom right has a ton of stack defense around it. So Elazer, he's on a bit of a timer. He's got to get enough damage to justify this before he loses all of his production and is fully into that base trade scenario where he cannot build anything more. So he knocks down the 9 o'clock base. He knocks down the natural. Into the main base he goes. As the Oracles continue to try to find just a little bit more value. I don't know how many Ravagers remain. Actually, no Ravagers remain at this point. No more Banelings as well. Baneling Nest still alive. The tech of Elazer is still alive. And Elazer, he's going to back out right now. Looks like he's pulling part of his army back. But he's pretty heavily supply blocked. He's going to lose that 12 o'clock position. Do we have any drones on the map? I don't think we do. There's a world where this ends in elimination.
No. We have a base on the top
okay.
side with a whole bunch of drones, so that's going to be okay. I mean, Elazer's army right now, I think is good enough to fight the army of ShoWTimE, especially on creep. We're looking at 30 roaches. 30 roaches should have some potential. The problem is obviously not all of them are home. ShoWTimE even tried to crank out a Desperation Void Ray. I cannot blame Elazer for thinking maybe I want to fight that army. On the other hand, he's got so much money in the bank. Oh man, he lost the spawning pool and the roach one at the same time, so he actually can't build anything at this point. I mean, the Oracles were able to get so many shots off. There is no anti-air on the side of Elazer. If Elazer would be able to spend that massive bank, maybe there would have been some hope. But by losing the spawning pool and losing the roach warren,